Well, welcome and thank you for attending segment 3 of our Rehabilitation Connect Forum. As a reminder, please use the chat to add any comments and the Q&A to ask questions to our presenters. And if we don't have a chance to get to a question now, we hope you're going to join us immediately after this for continue the conversation, and we'll get to it then. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our experts on our topic for this segment, which is the challenge of transitioning to life beyond high school for students who use cochlear implants. Our speakers today from the University of Michigan have a vast experience to share with us on this topic. Teresa Zwolan is a clinical professor and director of the University of Michigan Cochlear Implant Program. She received her PhD in audiology from Northwestern University and has worked at the University of Michigan since 1990. She's actively involved in patient care, research, and administrative aspects of the program. To date, more than 3,500 patients have received a cochlear implant at the University of Michigan, and Dr. Zwolan also serves as adjunct faculty at Wayne State University, where she teaches a graduate course on cochlear implants. She has authored and co-authored several papers on cochlear implants that focus on clinical management of children and adults, and has authored several book chapters dealing with various topics related to cochlear implants. And Birath Farhad is a bilingual speech-language pathologist and a listening and spoken language specialist at the University of Michigan's Cochlear Implant Program as well. Birath earned her master's in speech-language pathology with a specialization in pediatric hearing loss at the University of North Carolina. Since then, she has worked in clinical and research settings in the field of pediatric hearing loss and cochlear implantation. Birath is a member of the University of Michigan Sound Support Outreach Grant, supported by the state of Michigan and the University of Michigan's Department of Otolaryngology, providing outreach and lectures to educational professionals and students in the state of Michigan. She additionally serves on the Michigan Board of Speech-Language Pathology. Prior to joining the University of Michigan, Birath worked in the cochlear implant program at the University of Southern California. Thank you, Terry and Jennifer, Birath, for sharing with us this afternoon.
Hello, my name is Terry Zwolan, and I'm so pleased to be presenting to you today about the challenge of transitioning to life beyond school for students who use cochlear implants. I'd like to begin by acknowledging my co-authors, Birath Farhad and Jennifer Sill, who worked very hard to make this presentation for you. I'd also like to thank the organizers of Rehab Connect for inviting us to talk about this important population of patients, those teens who are transitioning from high school to college. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the University of Michigan Sound Support team. I work with such dedicated individuals. As you'll see, they provide all of the outreach that we provide to our patients, and they get up at 5 in the morning to drive 5 hours to Traverse City to meet with a school system and all these wonderful things that they're able to do. So I'm really fortunate to be part of such a great team. So today we're going to begin with just a brief overview of sound support. We're going to talk about some of our recent research with adolescents. We're going to talk clinically as well as what we do in terms of outreach to support our teens with cochlear implants. And we're going to finish with resources for teens, young adults, families, as well as professionals. So to begin with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this outreach grant that we have that's called Sound Support. And it was established in October of 2004 via the Michigan Medicaid Match Program. And this program supports children who are deaf or hard of hearing, also supports their parents and the professionals who serve them throughout the state of Michigan. It is a 50-50 cost share program, meaning that it's the costs are divided up 50-50 between the University of Michigan Department of Otolaryngology, as well as Michigan Medicaid. And it's given us a great opportunity to get to know the people at Michigan Medicaid, as well as to partner with them for this important endeavor. This program recognizes that important services are needed that cannot be billed for or reimbursed by insurers. So an example of that would be the sign language interpreters who are used throughout the university are supported by a matching program like ours. We previously provided school visits that were not able to bill for. And so Medicaid recognized that these are important parts of what we do and have helped us establish those and maintain them for our patients. So the mission of Sound Support is to improve the quality and timeliness of care for children who are deaf or hard of hearing, including diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation. So all areas of the spectrum with hearing loss. And we know that professionals really need additional tools and upkeep in terms of education in order to better serve the needs of children who are deaf or hard of hearing in the state of Michigan. And we're able to do that through this grant. Some of the things that Sound Support does, Jen is going to talk to you a little bit later about parent and recipient outreach. Professional outreach that we do is we visit the schools. We feel as though in person is so important, although during COVID, we've gone virtual on a lot of these visits, and we've been able to maintain contact with the schools. We do school and even daycare visits, classroom and staff presentations. One of my favorites are the roundtables. We can keep those kind of small, and we invite sometimes all of the audiologists in Michigan who work with cochlear implant patients, and we talk to them about different issues or difficult cases, or we might invite just speech pathologists, but we have these nice open discussions with professionals throughout our state. We offer about 7 professional webinars each year. We do them once a month for 7 months. And we have about 75 professionals throughout Michigan that log on to our professional webinars. We do coffee chats. We have a speech pathologist and audiologist that sit on a Zoom call for 30 minutes one day a week. And we sometimes get 10 to 15 people that join on and just call up and ask questions during their lunch hour. We do a partnership program where we mentor people, and we also visit them in their facilities. So we've gotten to know our partners throughout Michigan very well with that. And one of our big attractions is our annual conference that is subsidized by Sound Support, where we're able to bring about 100 people in with a featured speaker, and those have been very popular. When we first started in 2004, we were able to do a handful of school visits, and you can see those little red dots throughout some of the counties throughout the state of Michigan. And you know, with Michigan, we've got the Lower Peninsula as well as that UP or the Upper Peninsula. But if we superimpose all of the school visits we've done since Sound Support was established, you can see that we've visited almost every single county in the state of Michigan, including several visits to our neighbors in the Upper Peninsula. And we're very proud of these school visits and what they've accomplished. And really, the school visits have enabled us to facilitate a team approach with the educational professionals who work with our children with cochlear implants. We can observe the child in the classroom. We provide recommendations for some simple modifications to improve hearing in the classroom, improve the audibility of the teacher's voice. We share and collaborate on care plan as well as prognosis. These in-person visits or even Zoom visits are phenomenal for reaching out, connecting with the educational professionals so that we can come up with a good plan for these children. We provide them with updated information on technology. Remember, they're the troubleshooters on the ground floor working with our students. And if they can't help the children troubleshoot, they might go an entire day or several days without hearing. And so those educational personnel are so important for helping the children stay with sound all the time while at school. We provide support with assistive listening devices. Sometimes FM systems and these mini mics can be very confusing for educational personnel. Sometimes speech pathologists are not familiar with the auditory verbal approach, and we have 4 auditory verbal therapists, and we believe very strongly in the auditory verbal approach and its success with children with cochlear implants. So we want to spread the word about auditory verbal and teach these professionals how they can foster use of auditory verbal techniques and strategies. We provide professional learning opportunities for the school staff while we're there. We'll sometimes have an in-service with the staff, with the school principal, with the speech language pathologist. And a lot of our outreach, we can offer CEUs. So Sound Support has helped support that. So one of the greatest benefits we've had is being able to provide CEUs to a lot of the professionals throughout the state with a focus on hearing loss and treatment of hearing loss in the children throughout the state. I have a little clip here that shows Kelly, one of our speech language pathologists. And I'm going to play this for you, and it's where Kelly's telling us a little bit about sound support and the importance of school visits.
Reese is a patient that I've worked with since the start of his journey at the University of Michigan. I work with children who are deaf and hard of hearing and teaching them to listen and talk.
Reese, how are you? I think kids with hearing loss, it's not a one and done type of disability. Every year brings like lots of challenges, and it takes a team approach to help keep the student at the center of it. And Kelly came when Reese transferred to this school and educated his staff. His parents came, and that's really the ideal model.
Sound support was established for us to provide outreach to all of the professionals in the state of Michigan so that we can maximize the outcomes that our children with implants will have. It can't end at our clinic door. Not everybody can travel to Ann Arbor, so a lot of our outreach are to the educational professionals that work with the children to educate them about how to best work with the device and work with the children to make them learn to listen and talk the best they possibly can.
So we're pretty excited about sound support, and it's enabled us to do a lot of outreach to the schools, and a lot of it does focus on our adolescents and our teens and young adults. Another important part of what we do is some research, and it's my pleasure to talk to you today about a few of our recent research projects that we've performed with our young adults. We know that current research tends to focus on young recipients or older adults with implants, and those teens are sometimes left out. And so we wanted to make certain that that we look at this group that we work so closely with. Personally, they're my favorite group to work with. I love working with all ages, but there's something about those teenagers that I really like working with. We do know that accommodations are instrumental to the success of deaf and hard of hearing individuals in educational and workplace settings, but there's limited data available regarding accommodation use by adolescents. So in this study, we wanted to look at accommodation use by our adolescents. We had two primary research questions. We first wanted to know what types of accommodations are most frequently used. And is there a difference between the types of accommodations used by children in high school versus when they travel off to college? So we developed a 64-item questionnaire that had 9 demographic questions. There was a branch conditional structure to direct respondents to the correct stream for them. There were 12 questions for high school students, 13 questions for college students. There were also some questions for parents and as well as questions for students who were working. But for today, we're just going to focus on the responses of the high school students and college students about their accommodations. So we used a digital survey called Qualtrics, and we shared it nationwide with subjects. And we recruited these subjects, of course, from our University of Michigan patient population. We also submitted our survey through the ACIA member survey. And if you've never done that, it's a great way to distribute your survey. We got a lot of responses through ACIA. We also utilized online recipient groups for all 3 of the manufacturers, as well as online parents of children with CIs group through Facebook. And our study was approved by the Michigan Medicine IRB. Our inclusion criteria was just that the children be of chronicle age between 13 and 29 years of age. They could be an implant recipient or the parent of an implant recipient. And we had 112 subjects complete our survey. You can see that 77 of those were implant recipients and 35 parents responded for a total of 112 responses. We see on this questionnaire that most of them were female, that we had 49 female responses, 27 male respondents, and we had 1 student that did not choose to reveal their gender. Their mode of communication, we see that most of the children used listening and spoken language specifically. That was 72%. That number goes up quite a bit if we look at the children who primarily use LSL with a little bit of sign language. We have just a handful, 4 children who primarily use sign language with some LSL, and we didn't have any children who use sign language only. We see that when we look at our children, 49 of them responded just for high school and college. The remaining respondents indicated they were employed either full or part-time, and so their questions went the work route. So we have these 49 students that replied regarding their educational status and accommodations. So if we look at the high school respondents first, we asked them about their educational plan, and we see that 15 of them have an IEP or individual education plan. 7 of them are on a 504 plan, 3 have no services, and 1 student wasn't sure and did not respond. But we see that of our high school respondents, about 90% report being fully mainstreamed, and that's not really surprising when we look back at the previous slide to see how many children are active in auditory, verbal, and using listening and spoken language. If we look at the type of accommodations used by the high school students, we see that the top 2 are hearing assistive technology, or HAT, and remote mic technology, with about 33, or about a third of them using HAT and remote mic. And then just closely behind that is closed captioning. So a lot of our students are reporting closed captioning, and we know that both in high school and college, a lot of times videos are presented in class. And so that closed captioning is really important because those videos can be very difficult for our students. The lowest number was oral language interpreters. So we're not seeing that used very often, but we do see some children also using carts and note takers. If we ask them about the percentage of classes that they use accommodations with, we had 22 respondents for high school. And what we see is about half of them report that they're using accommodations in about 3/4 to 100% of their classes. So that's the blue bar on the far right. And then what we have is smaller numbers of students going through between over 50%, 26 to 50, and less than 25. I'm thrilled to see that these children are using these accommodations, and that, you know, almost half of them are using them a vast majority of the time, because in our clinic we work really closely with the families to stress the importance of using these accommodations. The ones who don't use the accommodations say that their comments were that I hear fine without them, or they're too much of a hassle. And I've encountered some students like that, and they tend to hear really well. And if they're positioned properly in the classroom and they're using their implant well, then sometimes they do get by without. But we're always happy to see when they're utilizing those accommodations to reduce the impact that background noise can have on their ability to hear in the classroom. When we surveyed our college students, we had 23 responses, and the accommodations that they use are similar, except for that closed captioning and HAT are sort of flip-flopped. So closed captioning was the #1 cited accommodation used by our college students, and HAT and remote mic were #2, less utilized than among the high school students. They are more likely to utilize a note taker, and they're more likely to utilize a cart. And one thing that we've noticed is it might be good for our high schoolers to be exposed to note takers, to be exposed to CART, so that that when they get to college, they know if that works for them, and they know if that's a good thing for them to ask when they meet with their disability office. So this just summarizes the differences in use of accommodations, and really, as we transition those students, it's our duty to kind of explain to them what their options are going to be in college, and help them learn how to ask for those accommodations so they can receive them appropriately and do the best that they can in the classroom. So some of the takeaway points from this survey is that a vast majority of our students use listening and spoken language only, and that clearly could have impacted our responses. We know that those children are very dependent on their hearing, and perhaps they're more likely to use accommodations because of that dependence on their hearing. But we did see that an additional 20% primarily use spoken language with some sign language as well. And of the high school respondents who have IEPs and 504 plans, more than half are using their accommodations. So we think that participation in the process of an IEP or a 504 plan really helps encourage the use of accommodations, either by making the teachers more aware or by making the students more aware, or actually by making both of them more aware about the need for accommodations. All right, so our next study, this study, we were more interested in the quality of life of children, adolescents, specifically cochlear implant users. And this study was published in Cochlear Implants International in the year 2020. And quality of life is really an important concept to understanding children and youth with hearing loss because of the importance of communication and social participation in everyday life. And even though we've looked at quality of life, or researchers have looked at quality of life in children and adults, it hasn't really been studied all that specifically in teens and adolescents. So we were interested in looking specifically at the adolescent population. So our two research questions we asked here were, how does the self-report quality of life of adolescents with cochlear implants compare to that of adolescents with typical hearing, and what factors might influence self-reported quality of life of children with cochlear implants? So for this study, we developed a 34-item questionnaire that included 14 demographic questions that included questions about their SES and communication mode. There were 9 questions adapted from the quality of life of deaf or hard of hearing youth that was developed in Seattle. And we also utilized 11 questions from the KidScreen 10 index, which has been normalized on children with normal hearing in Europe. This study was also IRB approved by Michigan Medicine, and parents had to consent for their children's participation. So we identified subjects through the University of Michigan Cochlear Implant Database. So in this study, it's different from the previous one in that all of the subjects came from our clinic. The participants were 10 to 18 years of age, and their age of implantation, we wanted children implanted prior to 5 years of age. So those are the children that were sent the surveys. We excluded children that had cognitive, visual, or developmental delays, as well as any comorbid conditions or an inability to complete the questionnaire independently. So we mailed 269 questionnaires to adolescents. 43 subjects completed the survey. That ends up being a 17.8% response rate. At first we thought that was low, but when we did some digging, we found out that the average response rate for such questionnaires is usually between 10 and 15%. So it looks like we're on track with most surveys in terms of that response rate. What we see is that we had more males than females who responded. About half, 40% of our children were utilizing bilateral cochlear implants. The mean age in implantation was 27.7 months with a range of 11 to 60 months. The communication mode, again, most of the children were auditory verbal or used oral communication. That accounted for over 80% of our children. And we did have 6 children utilizing total communication. We did utilize enrollment as Medicaid as a proxy for SES, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And 33%, a third of our children, were enrolled in Michigan Medicaid. So what we see here, first we looked at the KidScreen questions, which there were those specific KidScreen questions, and we compared our results on the KidScreen to the mean score of normal hearing adolescents on the KidScreen. And normal hearing children, their mean score was 50, and they had a standard deviation of 10. So with the normal hearing children, you can see the 2 red bars that represent the standard deviation and the blue bar in the middle representing the mean for the children with normal hearing. And then you can see all of those blue diamonds represent our children and their responses on the KidScreen. And what really surprised us is that an independent samples t-test indicated that differences between the 2 groups were statistically significant, and the children with implants scored slightly higher and significantly higher than the children with normal hearing on the KidScreen score, because we had a mean score of 53 with a standard deviation of 9, and that was significant. We were happy that our children had a self-reported quality of life that was comparable or even a little bit higher than that reported by children with normal hearing. Next, we wanted to look and see if it differed based on SES. So we compared children enrolled in Medicaid to those who were not enrolled in Medicaid. And we found that adolescents in the lower SES group scored lower on all questions, and that these differences were statistically significant for 4 out of the 9 questions. And these are on the HRQOL, and adolescents with Medicaid reported that they feel they're more likely to be bullied. It's harder to understand what others are saying, that their hearing loss impedes their future, and they're less likely to ask for help. We also wanted to know if there were differences based on communication mode. And what we saw is that there were no significant differences noted in the overall self-reported quality of life based on communication mode. And remember, we had children auditory, verbal, oral, and total communication. Examination of the responses for the individual questions on the KidScreen 10, those 10 KidScreen questions, revealed one question with a significant between group difference. And we saw that adolescents in the auditory, verbal, and oral groups rated the response to "my parents treat me fairly" significantly more positively than adolescents in the total communication group. And that was really the only difference that we saw based on communication mode. So based on these 2 studies, we're finding that adolescents with implants in our sample rated self-esteem and overall quality of life similar to children with normal hearing. We do see that some adolescents with a lower SES may be at greater risk for lower self-reports of quality of life or lower self-esteem. And that's something that we need to look out for clinically and make certain that we're giving extra care and extra time to those children if they need it. In our first study in regards to accommodations, we see that more than half of subjects in high school and college report using accommodations. And we're really excited about that because we know that they're improving their ability to hear in the classroom. And it's important to work with these students, to teach them to self-advocate, to be proud of their accommodations, to actually utilize them and to feel comfortable using them in order to sort of equalize the playing field in terms of their ability to hear in those classrooms that are oftentimes difficult listening situations. So the last thing I'm going to end up with is I'm going to take you through some of the clinical steps that we do as audiologists in regards to outreach, and then I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jen. But we wanted to recommend just a few of the steps that we take with our teenagers, especially as they prepare for life in college. We recommend annual cochlear implant programming and evaluation, and especially speech perception testing in quiet and noise. And sometimes with younger children, we might do them a disservice because we only tell the results or explain the results to parents. But as they become teenagers, we make a concerted effort to explain the results to the children or to the teens, young adults, so that we can show them the difference between quiet and noise and explain to them how those accommodations can help them in those noisy settings and help improve their outcomes. We'll sometimes test them in the booth with a mini mic to show them how much better they do with those accommodations. One take home, a piece of advice is if you're seeing a teen who's going off to college, make sure to do an unaided audiogram. We're not always good at doing those in implant programs, but it's important to do unaided testing because they'll need to take a copy of the audiogram to the disabilities office at their college to verify that they have a disability. We work very closely with the teens so they can describe their own hearing loss and communication needs to others so that when they visit the disabilities office, they know what they're going to ask for and they know what will help them in certain situations. Importantly, as they transition from high school to college, we do this with both the parents and the students as we talk about the differences in the educational laws, because we no longer have the IDEA and ADA with the high school. They won't have an IEP. everything in college needs to be self-disclosure. Our children are surprised when the disability office invites them in and says, do you want your parent to come with you? Because really all of it's focused on the student and no longer focused on the parent speaking up for the student. There's so much self-advocacy that the children needs. And when they do show that, they're so much more successful. So we review those accommodations and the transition resources with the family. We help the student develop a plan for visiting the student support offices or human resources at their workplace. And we importantly try to utilize state rehabilitation services for additional support. And we find that this makes such a difference in getting them prepared for life after high school. So I'm going to hand it over to Jen, and she's going to take you through where we start with speech pathologists. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. So similar to our CI audiologists in our clinic, our speech and language pathologists also offer annual evaluations for our recipients from pre-implantation all the way through their high school years. Our assessments typically include evaluation of vocabulary, receptive and expressive language, speech intelligibility and articulation, as well as reading comprehension. Even for our teens who are performing on par with their typically hearing peers, we minimally recommend that they come in for at least one final evaluation prior to transitioning out of high school. We find that this is a great time to discuss moving into the college arena, excuse me, vocational training and or the workplace. During these appointments, we like to review the teen's current educational services and or accommodations, as well as review transition resources as they're applicable. We really do try to have open conversations with their teens and their parents, making sure that they understand what their areas of strengths are, as well as their areas of weaknesses, and do they truly understand their needs, and do they feel capable and comfortable in advocating for themselves. In addition to our clinical care, our team provides outreach for our teens within our state through our Sound Support Grant, which Terry talked a little bit about. We know our teen population can be really challenging age group to pin down for events, given our teens already have such full, busy schedules between school, friends, sports, jobs, and extracurricular commitments. So for the remainder of our talk, we'll be sharing some of our current and past programming for our teen population, which have been the most well-received and attended. We hope to provide you with some inspiration for events and outreach that you may be able to facilitate within your own practices. So one of our most successful events are our summer camps. Over the years, we've offered one-day summer camps for the children with hearing loss and their parents. Each camp's broken up by age group. So we usually have one day geared towards our younger children, another day for our tweens and young teens, and then a third day specifically for our high school teens. The camps are run by our staff and volunteers, as well as a variety of guest speakers, which over the years have included some neuropsychologists, social workers, and a psychologist who is also a CI recipient herself. For the tweens and teens, we focused on fostering their socialization skills, increasing their independence, and just really preparing them for high school and for college. While the teens participate in activities and discussions, their parents are participating in a separate program which are tailored just for them. And we also want to point out that these summer camps have provided a great opportunity for our teens to obtain some of those community service volunteer hours. So not only are they able to get those volunteer hours, but our teens really do serve as such great role models for the younger children, as well as for their parents. One of our most successful teen events to date was held at a local venue called the Neutral Zone, which is specifically geared toward teens. So this space is intended for entertainment and recreation events for teens, and includes music performances and literary and art events, as well as community leadership. So this event focused on socialization and preparing for a transition from high school to college. So this event was really fun and flexible and casual, and was more teen-led rather than professionally led. This event really let the teens connect and socialize on their own terms, and they actually connected quite quickly. And before long, they were sharing stories, telling jokes, asking each other questions about their own experiences within their respective high schools. And as a matter of fact, many of our teens who met during this event still keep in touch, or still have kept in touch afterwards, which was really great because that was our ultimate goal, to facilitate those connections between the CI teen recipients. We also offered an area for hands-on experience with some of the most up-to-date assistive listening devices. So we had a table set up that was manned by our audiologists. And surprisingly, many of the teens had never tried out some of these devices before, so it was new to them. And our audiologists were available to talk about the devices and answer any questions that they had. So while our teens participated in one group, the parents were participating in another group where we discussed the challenges and procedures involved in college. Our sound support team members covered differences in federal laws between high school and college, accessibility for college students, and types of accommodations and how to request them, as well as for self-advocacy for college. And in addition to presentations from our staff, we also invited a young adult CI recipient who was able to share her own personal experiences in college and in the workplace, including some of those important accommodations. Some of our other successful events that have included our teens have been our family sporting events. And this event was at a junior league hockey game at a local arena. And we invited patients between the ages of 12 and 21 years and their families. And we also invited a local rep from one of the hearing assistive technology manufacturers, who gave a really nice presentation on the benefits of HAT. And then the participants were able to experience listening with this technology in the hockey arena, which we all know is an extremely noisy situation. So the patients and their parents were really able to see the benefits firsthand of this technology. We also had several of our audiologists there so that they could help assist with the pairing of the technology to each of our recipients' devices, as well as answer any questions, of course. So we had lunch provided in a separate room where the families and recipients could, again, make those important social connections. And then we ended the event with a raffle where one of our recipients actually won a device that was graciously donated by the manufacturer. And I just wanted to point out, if any of these outreach events, spark some interest in you and you'd like to discuss how you could implement similar events in your area, we encourage you to reach out and contact us. And we have our information available at the end of the talk. So podcasts have become one of our newest additions to sound support. We've been recording short, easily digestible episodes that are usually about 20 minutes or less, so that our patients and their families can just listen to them on the go. Our podcasts are posted on the SoundCloud, as well as on our CI program's Facebook page. And we additionally send out email blasts to professionals throughout our state so that they're able to share these with the families and teens that they're currently working with. The two podcasts that we highlighted here are CI Transitions for Teens and our Patient Spotlight, which was highlighting patients from our program that are doing great things in their communities. So for the Transitions for Teens podcast, we interviewed a group of college students and one young adult who had newly entered the workplace so that they could share their own personal experiences, including advice that they have for other teens and young adults that are going through these transitions. And for the Patient Spotlight podcast, we interviewed a 17-year-old high school senior who is a bilateral CI recipient, and she shared her personal experiences as a teen with CIs and also shared with us all the wonderful things she's doing in her community, which is including peer-to-peer mentoring with students with hearing loss in her local school district. And here's just a quick clip from that podcast.
So Isla, you've recently begun mentoring other kids with hearing loss. Can you tell us why you decided to do that?
I first decided to start mentoring kids with hearing loss because I looked back at all the appointments and struggles and situations that I've had growing up, and because I started to give presentations to my sister's classes about implants since I knew how to present it in a way that these younger kids would understand. And since then, I felt this feeling of satisfaction and excitement come out of me. It was then at that point that I knew it was something I wanted to do when I was older.
Okay. So each year we provide online learning experiences, which we call power hours for professionals across our state. These webinars are typically well attended with an average of about 60 to 70 attendees. Predominantly including local audiologists, speech pathologists, deaf and hard of hearing teachers, as well as teacher consultants, special education teachers, and interpreters. And we offer a fall series, which runs from October to December, and then a spring series, which runs from February to May. And while our webinars cover a variety of topics relating to hearing loss and implants, we always make sure to include talks relevant to our teen population. Our most recent teen-based webinars have covered self-advocacy and transitioning to life after high school. Each of our webinars is about an hour long, and it typically runs from 4 to 5 in the afternoon, which is the time that we've found to be most convenient for our local professionals, as many of them work in schools. All of these webinars are free of charge, and following each webinar, participants are eligible for continuing education units, which is really nice. We are currently offering ASHA CEUs, interpreter CEUs, and state continuing education hours, which are specific for our teachers here in Michigan. Our webinars are all recorded and they are available for viewing for the entire month. And in addition to the professional webinars, we also offer a summer series of webinars for parents. And these are also recorded and are available for viewing at any time on our U of M Sound Support YouTube channel. Next, we wanted to share a successful program called Pizza and Peers. So this program is a collaboration between Sound Support and a local ISD, intermediate school district. The program was based off of the model by Dr. Carrie Spangler in Ohio, and it's run by one of our CI and Sound Support team members, Dr. Anita Vereb, who is also a contracted educational audiologist with this particular ISD. And she is joined by a deaf and hard of hearing teacher from the ISD as well. The program is available for both middle and high school students, and for students with any degree of hearing loss, not just for students with CIs. And this program does a fantastic job at providing students with much needed opportunity to meet other DHH students across the entire county, while they're also learning all of those essential skills that they need to transition after high school, including self-advocacy and leadership skills. And here we have an example of an agenda from a recent Pizza and Peers meeting, which we'll go further into detail about over the next few slides. But I did want to point out that funding for transportation services is provided by the local school districts. While some teens are able to drive themselves if their local school allows, other students rely on school buses to transport them. Also, for some of the charter or private schools in the county, some students rely on vetted cabs, or they may have to have family members bring them. But most of these transportation issues were worked out ahead of time with all of the special education directors. And I also wanted to point out or mention that there are funds that are available so that each meeting, the students have access to both CART as well as a sign language interpreter. So here we have an example of an activity that the teens participated in called the Zones of Comfort. During this activity, the students were presented with questions about their comfort levels pertaining to certain situations that they may encounter as being a teen with hearing loss. So some of those questions they were asked included, how comfortable are you asking for help? How comfortable are you telling your teachers or friends about your hearing loss? Or how comfortable are you standing up for yourself if you've experienced bullying? So you can see here in the picture, the taped white lines on the carpet on the floor. That's where the students were instructed to stand up inside of the box, which represented how they felt in certain scenarios. So whether they felt very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, or just not comfortable at all. So this activity really helped to address the students' self-awareness and self-evaluation, as well as their self-advocacy skills. And during this activity, the students were able to share some of their own personal experiences. And then those students who indicated that they were very comfortable in that particular scenario was then asked to share, how they responded, what did they do to advocate for themselves, and how did that situation work out for them. Each meeting, typically has one or two guest speakers, and a recent invited guest speaker was Dr. McKee, who is a family medicine physician here at Michigan Medicine, and he works within the Deaf Health Clinic. He is also a hearing aid user and a CI recipient himself, and is also fluent in sign language. And during the same meeting, the other invited guest speaker was Dr. Lowry, who is also in the medical field and is currently a resident who also has hearing loss as well. So both doctors were invited to share stories about their own experiences. They also talked about the accommodations that they use in the workplace. And Dr. McKeeven brought in a listening stethoscope and showed how he uses his mini mic in his daily practice. So the doctors shared their advice with some of the take-home messages really being to find those DHH mentors and learn to be your own advocate. So Dr. Varab, who assists in running Pizza and Peers, shared with us some kind of lessons learned or things that you may want to take into consideration if this sounds like a program that you'd be interested in trying in your own areas. One being that attendance is not favorable on the weekends or after school hours. Again, we know how busy our teens are, and also that with the after school hours and the weekends, that the families are then responsible for bringing the teens, and some of the families may live up to even 30 minutes away because our county is quite large. So they found that they got the best numbers when these events are actually held during school hours. In fact, they found Fridays worked out best because if any of the students missed assignments by attending this group, they were able to make up those assignments and get them completed over the weekend. Also, given like busy busing transportation schedules, the best time of day to hold these meetings were from 9:30 to 12:30. And then they also found it helpful to limit the number of meetings to about 3 per year to reduce the amount of time that the students were spending away from their classes. I also wanted to share that for those students who have attended one meeting, there is a very high return rate. So clearly these students are seeing the importance of these meetings and are making connections and really developing relationships. And in fact, many of these students keep in touch with each other outside of these meetings. One of the past attendees of the Pizza and Peers program is the young lady whom we interviewed for our recent CI patient podcast episode. And in this episode, she talks about how the Pizza and Peers program helped her to not only become a stronger advocate for herself, but also helped her build her confidence, so much so that she's now paying it forward and is helping other students with hearing loss. So this year, she's taking an independent study through her school, and with supervision of her teacher consultant, is providing mentorship for her peers who are deaf and hard of hearing, mostly with a late elementary school age and the early middle school students. Since we're still in a pandemic right now, all of her mentorship meetings are currently being held virtually, and she typically meets with peers one day a week after school hours, and she meets them via Zoom or FaceTime in our messaging. And she reports that she frequently addresses situations that she's experienced at their age, what it was like to transition from middle school to high school, as well as bringing up possible challenges that they may face in the future and how to best handle them. And then an unexpected benefit of her role as being a student mentor is that she really had the opportunity to practice and improve her own conversation skills, which she reported to previously kind of have it was a little more challenging for her. But with all the practice, she feels like she's really improved those conversational and personal skills. So when we're doing our outreach, everyone is always asking for and really appreciates resources. So we thought we would wrap up today's discussion with a few resources that your teen and young adult CI recipients may find helpful. AG Bell has two great leadership programs for teens. Many of you may be familiar with the LOFT program, and that can be life-changing for our teens. And as a matter of fact, the young woman that we've been talking about found the LOFT program to be so impactful that she actually wrote her college essay about this experience. And as a shout out to her, she has been admitted into the University of Michigan for this fall. So great accomplishment for her. So this year, AG Bell has introduced another program for teens called the LEAP program. And while the LOFT program is a 5-day summer program in Washington, D.C., the LEAP program is being offered online with 3 different options or sessions to choose from over the summertime. Although services will vary from state to state and even by counties, state rehab services can be an excellent resource for this, especially for this age group. If you aren't familiar with your state services, we recommend that you contact them and become familiar, as they have lots to offer. In Michigan, they offer employment and education related services, independence and self-advocacy training, workplace readiness, and peer mentoring. And in our state, these services are available for students as young as 14 years of age. So again, I just encourage you to look into similar services that may be offered in your state. We know that all 3 of the cochlear implant manufacturers are great at providing extensive resources. And so we just wanted to quickly highlight a few of those resources for each manufacturer that may be particularly beneficial for our teen and young adults. For example, at the Cochlear celebration events, they have a program called the Teen Scene for recipients between the ages of 14 and 18 years. We also wanted to point out there is a tween and teen section of Communication Corner, and the newly released Copilot, which is an app-based AR program geared for teens and adults. MED-EL also has many really relevant blog posts to teens, teen rehab and assessment section on their Bridge website, and adult rehab kits, which would also be appropriate for our teens and young adults. The teen recipients can also connect with others on their Hear Peers online forum. And AB has some nice available resources on their rehab portal called Hearing Success. The listening room also has tips for communication strategies and activities that are applicable for our teens. And the Hearing Journey is a nice online forum where, again, recipients can connect with others. PHONAC has the guidance to access, or the GAP transition planning checklist, which is designed to help prepare our teens and young adults transition into college or into the workplace. Also from PHONAC is the Hearing Like Me community, and in that they have the teen community. There are several great blogs which are specifically geared towards this population. And the U.S. Department of Education has published a transition guide for students and youth with disabilities, with all types of disabilities, who are making the transition into post-secondary education or employment. So it just has a lot of great information, which may be helpful for both students and professionals. And for our teens and young adults who are college bound, we have listed a few resources for scholarships that may be available to assist them. For our teens and young adults who are about to enter the workforce, the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, has a wealth of information. And JAN is really great because it has information for both the prospective employees as well as the employers. And finally, the U.S. government seeks to recruit and hire individuals with disabilities. So we've included the link here so that you may share this with your young adults seeking employment. They're able to upload their resumes and search for jobs on the website. And having a hearing loss allows them to be considered for federal jobs under the non-competitive process, as well as through the traditional competitive process. So thank you so much for joining us today to talk about our teen and young adult CI recipients. While this age group may often fly under the radar, our professional support can positively impact the outcomes for our teens during this period of transition from high school to college or the workplace. And again, we encourage you to reach out to our Sound Support Program with any questions or comments. And we hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Terry and to Jennifer. Jennifer couldn't join us this afternoon, but please also check out her abstract and information. And we're just grateful that Breeze is going to be able to join as well. We have such a tiny bit of time left, so I think we only have time for one question, but I hope everyone can come to continue the conversation because there were a lot of questions shared. You guys are really doing so much to support this population of teens and high schoolers, college kids. And so I think one of the things people seem to be really interested in is the funding. I know it sounds like it's a shared funding program, but Terry, could you share a little bit more about maybe how that came to be and what that looks like?
Yeah, it's based on federal funds that are routed through the states of Medicaid. And in Michigan, they chose to do these programs that provide valuable services that are not reimbursable for areas. So we really lucked out with it years ago, and it has really grown our relationship with Medicaid. We know them well. We can advocate for better Medicaid services for our children as well as our adults. And it's been really life-changing for our program. So I don't think all states have it, but I would encourage everyone to really check to see if there is such a program in their state through their Medicaid.
Great, thank you so much. That's really helpful. I think, so I'm interested, there were so many great ideas. One of the ideas I found really interesting is this kind of coffee chat type of thing that you're doing. And Breeze, is that available for parents and professionals to join? What does that kind of, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you. That's a great question. So currently we are offering it. Typically it's Mondays And it's for professionals at this time, with the thought being that they can pop on during their lunch break and they don't all have to come for the entire time. But as Terry had mentioned in our talk, we sometimes have weeks where we have up to 15 professionals log on, and it can be really quick questions. Sometimes they get really in depth, but it's incredibly casual, low key. And we haven't done something similar yet for parents, especially during the pandemic. We found that parents are just really burnt out. They have a lot on their plates, virtual learning, they're zoomed out. But what has been so nice from the professional lens is that the coffee chats, not only do they help us disseminate information to the professionals we work with closely, but it helps us build that rapport with providers in the community and bridge the clinic and the classroom and really build some trust there, so that the folks that we often have repeat people who come again week after week, they feel comfortable just popping in and speaking with one of our audiologists or speech language pathologists, and they don't wait until a question or an issue has gone on too long to have it addressed. So it's just been a really nice forum. Again, it's hard to find times for everyone that they're available, but if it's something that you can look at in your practice, even a rotating time, professionals have really responded well to this offering that we have through Sound Support. Great question.
I bet. I love that idea. That's a great idea. But we're out of time here, but we are going to have time now and continue the conversation. I think the link has also been shared. So that's going to be a Zoom meeting. So you will log off of where you are now and click the Zoom meeting, and we will hear from all of our presenters. Will be there from our rehabilitation forum. So we'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah.